Hello guys, welcome back to our anime explainer. Guys, please like the video and subscribe to my channel. Today is explanation of Soul Land 2 Peerless Tang Men based on novel. So let's start. In the resting zone, the tiger scorpion Doluo Zhongpeng, who sat at the back of the Holy Ghost sect, stood up with a dark expression on his face. He mouthed something to those in the waiting zone. No one knew what he was saying. In the waiting zone, Tang Way, who stood at the front, turned to look at the tiger scorpion Doluo. Then, she nodded in his direction. Huo Yuhao had been observing the two of them. His gaze likewise fell onto the familiar woman next to him. Is she my sister? No matter what, he had to find out the truth after this tournament ended. Bei stood in the arena. He continued to absorb soul power from the milk bottle. He was not perturbed at all by what was going on around him. Over on the Holy Ghost sect side, under Tang Way's beckoning, another team member leapt onto the arena. This person was extremely tall, at least 2 meters, but at the same time, he was extremely skinny. He looked as if he were a twig. His long black robes hung on his frame like an old sack. His movements were evidently very stiff, and he was not very fast, either. He walked slowly and rigidly toward the center of the arena, as if his knees could not bend. State your names. Tang Sect, Bei. Holy Ghost Sect, Wang Xiaolei. Wang Xiaolei's voice was raspy and cold. It seemed to reverberate slightly in the air. It was vastly different from that of a normal person. When he saw Wang Xiaolei walk onto the arena, a change happened in Huo Yuhao's eyes. His lips moved as he said something to Bei up in the arena. Only then did Bei open his eyes again. He put his milk bottle away. Will both participants please move back and prepare for the match to begin? Bei slowly walked to the end of the arena. Wang Xiaolei of the Holy Ghost sect did the same as he ambled stiffly over. His stiff, slow movements made him appear wizened. The crowd quieted down. One match did not mean everything. While many people thought that Bei's power rivaled Wang Qiu's, he had appeared less often than she had. Many wanted to see if he had gotten by so far by luck or by skill. Before this round had started, not many people thought that the Tang sect had a chance. After all, among ordinary folks and normal soul masters, evil soul masters were mysterious, powerful, and bloodthirsty. No one would have imagined that an ordinary soul master could beat an evil soul master under equal conditions. However, their mindset now started to change. Bei was able to prove through his actions that these evil soul masters were not invincible. While they were scary, they could still be killed by ordinary soul masters of the same level. Of course, everyone could see that Jili of the Holy Ghost sect had been careless. Before he could even use his most powerful soul skills, he had been slain. Evidently, he had underestimated his opponent. Now that the Tang sect had killed one of their opponents, they had gained an advantage in both the individual elimination round and the group round. However, this was not an absolute advantage. The second round was just as important. The protective soul barriers started to rise. The unbreakable Doluo stood at the center of the arena as he looked at Bei, who had walked to the edge of the arena and was wearing a slight, elegant smile on his face. As the referee, in his eyes the Holy Ghost sect was not the only mysterious sect anymore. While he had refereed many rounds with the Tang sect, they now appeared to be shrouded in another veil of mystery, too. The Tang sect was able to conceal their abilities so well. In the previous round, facing the powerful soul masters from the body sect, they did not even use their full strength. Only now had Bei unleashed his powerful fifth soul skill. While Xingzhon was a class 9 soul engineer, and his martial soul could not compare to a real title Doluo, he was much more perceptive than normal people thanks to his cultivation. He could not only sense the perfection that Long Aotian had detected, but he also could sense the essence as well. Why were Bei's 4 palm strikes able to deliver such terrifying destructive power? Furthermore, it came from the inside out. This was not just his power alone, Jili's power may have been involved in some way too. In other words, his attack was able to affect Jili's internal soul power and cause it to explode. This move was no ordinary soul skill. A truly powerful soul master actually had such a powerful tactic at his disposal. Begin. While thoughts surfaced in his mind non-stop, they did not affect the way Xingzhon refereed this battle. As his right hand came down, Bei, who had looked relaxed, warm, and happy just moments ago, suddenly moved forward rapidly. His charge this time was even more relentless. Even though it was weaker than Wang Qiu's terrifyingly explosive power, he was able to cross the arena in a breath's time. The only reason he charged forward so ferociously was because Huo Yuhao had said one sentence to Bei Bei. Your opponent specializes in long-distance attacks. Force him into close combat. The impact of spiritual detection was unparalleled at this moment. On the other side, Wang Xiaolei stood where he was without moving. He then lifted his slender right arm, and soul rings started to rise from underneath his feet. He was indeed a disciple of a powerful evil soul master sect. He also had 6 soul rings, which were in the perfect combination. They slowly rose together, 2 yellow, 2 purple, and 2 black. At this moment, a white, bony claw reached out from his right sleeve, pointing toward Bei Bei. Wang Xiaolei's first soul ring started to shine. An odd scene appeared once more. A cluster of white, bony claws suddenly appeared from the metal ground of the arena, trying to grab Bei Bei's legs. 2 of them found purchase, and held him fast. Even though it was daytime, the sky was already overcast. Coupled with the pile of claw bones that appeared on the ground, everyone was shocked. A low voice rumbled from Wang Xiaolei's cloak. 5 phalanx bones spun on his outstretched claw. His second, third, fourth, fifth, and sixth soul rings started to shine with light in a mysterious fashion. His soul rings flashed in order. The light from his soul rings flashed like a wave churning in the sea. No one could tell what soul skills Wang Xiaolei was using. With his legs trapped, Bei Bei's charge was naturally stopped. As he had charged too ferociously, his body instantly tumbled forward. Bei Bei pushed himself up from the ground in front of him and stood upright once more. At the same time, a huge swathe of electricity emerged from his feet. This was his second soul skill, Vigorous Thunderbolt. Bei Bei's control over his second soul skill was amazing. In the previous round, by compressing Vigorous Thunderbolt between his palms into a dense forest of electricity, he was able to stop Ji Li's tongue. At this moment, Vigorous Thunderbolt was concentrated on his legs. Instantly, with a crackle and a hiss, the claws that were grabbing his legs were reduced to dust. One had to know that lightning itself was a coagulation of the natural chi of heaven and earth, and hence it was able to suppress the power of all evil beings. Earlier, the 5th soul skill Bei Bei had used was called Dragon Emperor Demonic Rapture, by Elder Mu, because the thunderous natural chi, and the power of light, were able to form an extraordinary force that could stop all things demonic. Hence, it was able to suppress all types of evil soul masters. This was why the mysterious imperial tutor was so agitated when he saw it. However, his short delay allowed his opponent to complete his soul skill. Wang Xiaolei pressed forward toward Bei Bei, and a ball of mysterious, ice-blue light shone on his claw bones. Instantly, a pale white halo of light appeared underneath Bei Bei's feet. Bei Bei felt a powerful, ghastly cold energy assaulting him. Then, everything around him turned white. Second soul skill, Evil Frost. Wang Xiaolei's freezing power was different from Huo Yuhao's ultimate ice. His attack was not pure ice type. Instead, it was refined from the evil power of avenging spirits. The freezing sensation came from condensed evil and a desire for vengeance. His soul skill required him to continually replenish a supply of avenging spirits for use. Every avenging spirit came from a life. Like many evil soul masters, his abilities came from murder. Wang Xiaolei's mind was clear. He wanted to use this soul skill to pollute Bei Bei. As long as he was able to corrupt Bei Bei's martial soul and prevent him from using his light power, he would be at an advantage. The moment he used Evil Frost, Wang Xiaolei took a step forward and raised his right hand high into the air. As his right hand rose, a collective gasp could be heard from the crowd. His sleeve slid down all the way to his shoulder to reveal his right arm, which was nothing but white bones. Could this mean that Wang Xiaolei, underneath his black robe, was just a skeleton? The eerie and mysterious nature of evil soul masters made everyone's hair stand up, and their blood run cold. Purplish-black light started to gather around Wang Xiaolei's upraised right hand. His evil frost was not only able to pollute his opponent, but it also allowed his avenging spirit to devour his opponent in a frenzy, and even turn his opponent into another one. At the same time, it had powerful immobilizing effects. As for how long he could immobilize his opponent, that depended on his opponent's power. At this moment, the 5th soul ring on his body started to shine. He had learned from Ji Li's mistake of being careless and underestimating his opponent. This time, Wang Xiaolei decided to show no mercy. The purplish-black light on his right hand became extremely eye-catching. The wails of avenging spirits could be heard everywhere. Even the unbreakable Doluo's face turned dark. Naturally, he did not fear Wang Xiaolei's attack. However, he could clearly sense that the highly concentrated nature of Wang Xiaolei's attack was extracted from hundreds of lives. This guy was a true executioner. While Xingzhong came from the Sun Moon Empire, and had a close relationship with the imperial family, he did not like the evil soul masters. In his heart, he resolved that if this Bei from the Tang sect were to kill this guy, he would definitely not intervene. A scream could be heard. Wang Xiaolei's right arm suddenly came down. Instantly, a long purplish-black whip swung out from his right hand. The whip cracked straight toward Bei, who had been immobilized by his evil frost. This was his powerful fifth soul skill, Death Whip. Once someone was struck by the Death Whip, he would be eaten away by an aura of death. At the same time, he would be ferociously attacked by the avenging spirits in the Death Whip until he became an avenging spirit too. The Death Whip was forged from avenging spirits. Wang Xiaolei's Death Whip already had more than 200 avenging spirits in it. As it was formed from so many avenging spirits, this fifth soul skill's strength could easily overpower many seven-ringed soul sages. One had to know that it was not easy to make avenging spirits. It was not just a simple matter of killing someone. Only those with an intense hatred in their hearts at the moment of death, or those who had been terrified prior to their demise, could be turned into powerful avenging spirits. Because of this, no one knew how many people Wang Xiaolei had killed to achieve his current powers. Xingzhong realized that he did not know evil soul masters well enough. The number of people Wang Xiaolei had killed should be in the thousands by now. The purplish-black whip swished through the air, and one could hear countless deafening wails. This sound alone spread far from the tournament's arena. Some members of the audience who were close to the arena felt an intense giddiness, as if their souls were about to leave their bodies. After this tournament, many of them would be struck by severe illnesses. Bei stood there without moving. It was as if he had already been polluted by the evil frost. Faced with the death whip now, there appeared to be nothing he could do. Just as the horrifying whip was about to land on him, a sudden, intense golden light suddenly shone from the center of Bei's body outward. The evil icy blue layer around his body was blown off. A clear golden palm reached out and grabbed the whip. Wails could be heard from the long whip. One could clearly see a huge amount of mist seeping out from the area around Bei's hand. In the mist, one could many twisted human faces dissipating in the air, as well as streams of black gases floating around them. Wang Xiaolei was infuriated as he roared. He had spent a lot of time and effort crafting his death whip, to the point where he himself was no longer fully human. At this moment, the light, lightning, and demon-destroying abilities of Bei were wrecking his whip. Even if just a bit of it was wrecked, it was not something Wang Xiaolei would let go. However, Wang Xiaolei remained calm. Under these circumstances, he did not think about withdrawing his death whip. Instead, he flicked his wrist upward, causing the death whip to coil around Bei's neck like a snake. At this moment, Wang Xiaolei was extremely careful, because he could clearly see Bei's fifth soul ring flashing around his body. This meant that he was readying his Dragon Emperor demonic rupture. However, Wang Xiaolei had tricks up his sleeves too. His sixth soul ring started to shine, and a ball of purplish-black light coated his body. At this moment, his robe finally burst open. Just as many had guessed, without his robe, Wang Xiaolei was nothing more than a white skeleton. Two dark red fires jumped in his eye sockets. One could see countless purplish-black patterns all over his bones. At this moment, he lifted his left hand and pressed it down onto his right hand. Balls of purplish-black light were sent over from his left hand to the death whip, which he was wielding in his right hand. The avenging spirits appeared to be calmed by this, and a terrifying aura of death surged toward Bei like a tidal wave. The expression on Bei's face changed. He could clearly feel that the aura of death that was rushing toward him would allow the death whip to break free from his grasp. He took a step back and let go. He thrust out with his palms and landed 4 palm strikes on the purplish-black aura of death that was surging toward him. Thunder boomed around him. Golden bolts of lightning a meter wide exploded in mid-air. Every single explosion of lightning would destroy huge swathes of the purplish-black aura. However, it continued to crash toward him. Some of it landed on the ground. Instantly, the metal on the ground dissolved silently. Furthermore, the purplish-black aura would not just eat through the metal on the ground, but also bored holes in the stone below after they were done with the metal. Many tiny holes whose depth could not be seen started to appear. Their densely packed nature made everyone uncomfortable. Death Withering, Wang Xiaolei's sixth soul skill. This was also his most powerful one. However, before the Dragon Emperor demonic rupture, neither Death Withering nor the Death Whip stood a chance, and they were both shattered by its powerful demon-destroying abilities. After the last Dragon Emperor demonic rupture was unleashed, an explosion boomed in the air. 1/3 of the Death Whip was completely shattered, and the remainder of the Death Withering was utterly obliterated. On the main podium, the mysterious Imperial Tutor said, "If this guy doesn't die, he'll become another Mu Yan in a few decades." Xu Qianran said nothing. Instead, he fixed his gaze on the arena. Bei Bei's powerful palms could force even evil soul masters into retreat with each strike. They were powerful indeed. The audience spectating the match cheered Bei Bei on relentlessly. In their eyes, the skeletal Wang Xiaolei was too horrifying. They wanted Bei Bei to kill him quickly, just like he did Ji Li. The energy from their clash reverberated in the air. The fire that danced in Wang Xiaolei's eye sockets dimmed a bit. However, Bei Bei also took a few steps back. Both sides were evidently shaken from the clash. The radiant holy dragon's image appeared behind Bei Bei. He lifted his head and let out a draconic roar. Then, he charged toward Wang Xiaolei once more. Claws appeared on the ground once again. However, they were unable to stop Bei Bei, who was currently in his radiant holy dragon state. Everywhere Bei Bei passed, the bones would disintegrate. There was no way they could stop him. The spirit fire that danced in Wang Xiaolei's eyes looked shocked. While they had appeared to be evenly matched just now, he was unable to widen the distance between Bei Bei and himself. He was also unable to defeat Bei Bei with his two main soul skills. He knew that he was now at a disadvantage. His only hope was that Bei Bei could not maintain his explosive state for long. Wang Xiaolei specialized in long-range attacks. However, speed was a major problem for him. It was impossible for him to widen the distance via speed. The only thing he could do was assault his opponent non-stop to block him. He grabbed at the air with his right hand, and his third soul ring flashed. A dark purple bubble appeared in mid-air and enveloped his body. Following that, he extended his skeletal left and right arms. The purplish-black patterns on his body lit up. The moment he reached out with his arms, his fourth soul ring started to shine. The purplish-black light started to seep out from his feet. This was his third soul skill, Death Protection, and his fourth soul skill, Dead Spirit Sea. This was Wang Xiaolei's most powerful attack. Strengthened by Dead Spirit Sea, he would normally then release his fifth and sixth soul skills. However, as Bei Bei's attack was too fast, there was no way he could have released his Dead Spirit Sea in time before. Dead Spirit Sea was like a domain-type ability, but not quite. It only had a radius of 5 meters. Once it was released, Dead Spirit Sea would not move with Wang Xiaolei. All attacks he released afterward would increase in strength. Furthermore, it nourished the avenging spirits, giving them new strength. How could one who was chosen to represent the Holy Ghost Church not have astounding abilities? When Bei Bei was less than 20 meters from him, he raised his right hand and slashed it toward Wang Xiaolei with his thunderous dragon claw. However, the moment the golden thunderous dragon claw entered the zone of the Dead Spirit Sea, it started to change. Purplish-black light flashed and pulsated. The golden thunderous dragon claw was cloaked with a layer of purplish-black light. While its demon-destroying abilities were able to resist the purplish-black light, it dissipated completely when it reached Death Protection. All that was left were a few strands of purplish-black light that landed uselessly on Wang Xiaolei's Death Protection. Wang Xiaolei moved his hands up and down. At this moment, he no longer cared about the depletion of his soul power. Layers of evil frost surged from his Dead Spirit Sea. Like a tsunami, they crashed toward Bei Bei. Bei Bei snorted coldly, and his third soul ring started to flash. It was thunderous fury. A huge golden tendril of electricity wrapped itself around his body. At the same time, the toes of his left foot touched the ground. He then charged like an arrow into the Dead Spirit Sea without any hesitation. Even though the Dead Spirit Sea only had a radius of about 5 meters, Wang Xiaolei had already retreated to its other end. The moment Bei Bei entered it, he could feel his body going cold. Avenging spirits wailed, which made his soul feel unstable, as if it were about to leave his body. The evil frost continued to assault his body, trying to freeze both his body and his soul. Bei Bei's speed slowed visibly. The thunder and lightning around his body fought against the evil frost, but now, every step he took became arduous. Wang Xiaolei laughed. His laughter was as chilling as the caw of a crow. Fool, your biggest mistake was entering my Dead Spirit Sea. Time to enjoy death withering in the Dead Spirit Sea. As he said that, he lifted his hands, and a purplish-black fountain centered around his body started to seep into every corner of the Dead Spirit Sea. The terrifying death aura rushed toward Bei Bei frantically. Once, Wang Xiaolei had used this move to simultaneously kill 2 soul sages. Then, he turned them into the main avenging spirits for his death whip. He anticipated the moment when he could do the same to Bei Bei. How would his light and demon-destroying soul affect his death whip after he subdued Bei Bei? What would his death whip become? Maybe it wouldn't even fear light-type attacks anymore. The overcast sky today was a great advantage for the evil soul masters, particularly for Wang Xiaolei. Had it been sunny, the strength of his attacks would have been greatly reduced. He might not even have been able to compete, and his team would have had to activate their reserves. At this moment, he brimmed with confidence. He could almost see the very moment when Bei Bei became part of his death whip. As a powerful evil soul master, Wang Xiaolei was very perceptive. He could clearly analyze that the Dragon Emperor demonic rupture attack Bei Bei had used earlier could not be used consecutively. How could a soul skill which fused with spiritual power be simple? He had already used it twice in 2 battles. If he wanted to continue using it, he would need to take a rest. Without needing to fear the terrifying power of Dragon Emperor demonic rupture, his 6th soul skill, Death Withering, which was further strengthened by his 4th soul skill, Dead Spirit Sea, could not be easily resisted. Wang Xiaolei thought he almost saw terror in Bei Bei's eyes. The spirit fire in his eye sockets danced rapidly. However, he quickly saw Bei Bei laugh. His laughter was cold and arrogant. Bei Bei, who usually had a warm demeanor, now treated his opponent arrogantly. In his heart, he always viewed himself as above everything else. This was the true nature of Sovereign's descent. If fear appeared in his heart, how could he control the Sovereign's descent? Bei Bei bent over. Looking at him, it was as if his entire body had curled up. At the same time, a black halo rose, and an intense golden light shone from his body. With a clear and mighty dragon roar, the huge image of the radiant holy dragon crashed into Bei Bei and entered his body. Now, Bei Bei was covered with a thick layer of golden armor. He shot out like a thunderbolt. Even though the radiant holy dragon had taken Bei Bei's humanoid form, at this moment, he resembled a true radiant holy dragon. As this radiant holy dragon charged forward, it started to swell quickly. Then, in mid-air, it took the shape of a huge dragon head. There was only a dragon head. This meant that Bei Bei had yet to enter the level of a 7-ringed soul master, who could use his martial soul true body. However, the appearance of just this dragon head alone was enough to make the mysterious imperial tutor stand up. The golden dragon head brimmed with a powerful, regal flavor. The powerful radiant holy dragon burst forth. Dragon Emperor's realm Quake, the imperial tutor said word by word, as he named Bei Bei's soul skill. A golden halo with a 15-meter radius appeared. The halo completely encircled the Dead Spirit Sea. In the center of the halo, one could see that humongous, arrogant dragon head. Inside the halo were numerous golden holy dragons. As they appeared, the Dead Spirit Sea started to slow. Death Withering, which was gaining momentum, also stopped in place. Compared to Wang Xiaolei and his horrifying soul skills, Bei Bei's soul skills appeared extremely dazzling. At least 10 golden holy dragons appeared in the halo. At this moment, Wang Xiaolei suddenly discovered that there was nothing he could do. An indescribable terror now appeared in his mind. His Death Withering and Dead Spirit Sea both broke free from his control. All he could feel was that his soul was slowly rising. Everything around him became cloaked in gold. After the realistic-looking radiant holy dragons appeared, they did not move. They were like statues suspended in mid-air. The dragon head in the center roared once more. It was as if it had given an order to attack. All of the radiant holy dragons unleashed their devastating attacks together. They turned into rays of golden lightning that flashed and dashed around within the golden halo. The Dead Spirit Sea and Death Withering were instantly ripped apart by the dragon-shaped thunder and lightning. At the same time, they all charged toward Wang Xiaolei. Boom! 4 explosions sounded in the arena. 3 blows, and Wang Xiaolei's death protection was shattered. Jingzhon, the unbreakable Doluor, reacted and wanted to go and save him. However, the golden halo on the ground started to shine intensely. A golden 30-meter-tall pillar of light started to rise into the sky. Even Jing Zhon could not enter at this moment. When he touched the golden pillar, golden lightning circled his entire body. Even though he tried to resist it with his defensive soul tools, it was impossible to take even a single step. This lasted for less than 2 seconds. Soon, slowly faded and disappeared. In the sky, the shadow of the radiant holy dragon flickered in and out of sight. The dozen radiant holy dragons flew up into the sky. Dragon Emperor's realm Quake. This was a powerful soul skill the dragon god Doluo, Mu Yen, had created. It specialized in destroying demons and stopping evil soul masters. Dragon Emperor Realm Quake and Dragon Emperor Demonic Rupture were the two signature killer moves of Elder Mu many years ago. No one knew how many evil soul masters he'd killed with them. Evil soul masters were all terrified of them. At this moment, it was clear that Bei Bei had used the same methods and inherited his master's skills. Wang Xiaolei's body had disappeared completely. Compared to Ji Li, his disappearance was even more traceless. No one saw how he had really disappeared. The giant gold pillar of light was gone, which meant that he disappeared naturally as well. Not even a single trace of him was left. The entire arena fell silent once more. Bei Bei had just killed 2 Soul Emperor-level evil soul masters. At this moment, no one dared to say that Wang Qiu'er was the most powerful dragon martial soul master of this tournament. Until she could beat him, no one would say that. Yu Qianlong was completely still. As a fellow dragon martial soul master, and as someone with the blue lightning tyrant dragon martial soul, he now truly understood how powerful Bei Bei's attack was. This was a soul skill that surpassed even that of an ordinary soul sage. He knew that he was definitely not Bei Bei's opponent. It was hard to even speak for Wang Qiu'er. Very hard to say, indeed. Where did the Tang sect come from? Why are they so powerful? Bei Bei reappeared where the golden light pillar once was. His face looked pale, but he stood upright. Regardless of whether it was his quick breaths or his unhealthy complexion, neither could diminish the determined look in his eyes. He'd won. Indeed, he'd won once more. Twice. And he had killed 2 people. Everyone in the audience was cheering for him. Demon Destroying. This was his light-type Demon Destroying ability. Even though every Soul Emperor could use their 5th and 6th soul skills, very few could use up as much power as he had. Bei Bei stood there quietly. It took some time for his breathing to normalize once more. He lifted his right hand slowly and pointed in the direction of the Holy Ghost Sect's waiting zone. He extended his index finger and pointed straight at Tang Way, who sat at the front of the resting zone. She appeared agitated. She stood up and looked coldly at Bei Bei. While she wore a hood over her head, her sharp gaze bored into Bei Bei, who was separated from her by the descending protective soul barrier. Individual elimination round, round 2, victory, the Tang sect. When he said these words, even Jing Zhon was dumbfounded. 2-0, who would have thought that the Tang sect would take the lead? Bei Bei inhaled and lowered his arm. He turned and walked expressionlessly to the center of the arena. Slowly, he walked in front of the unbreakable Doluo, and took out his milk bottle once more as he stood there, slowly replenishing his soul power. Tang Way turned around and looked at the waiting zone. The shock from the scorpion tiger Doluo Zhongpeng's eyes had disappeared. It was slowly being replaced by fear. The moment Bei Bei unleashed his Dragon Emperor Realm Quake, it was as if he had returned to the moment when the dragon god Doluo Mu Yen had unleashed the same powerful move to suppress him. This was where his terror came from. The skills of the dragon god Doluo had indeed been passed down. Fortunately, this bastard is still young. At this moment, a cold light flashed in Zhongpeng's eyes. He nodded meaningfully at Tang Way. Tang Way nodded. On the balls of her feet, she stood up with her back facing the arena. Then, her slender body somersaulted in mid-air, and she ascended comfortably into the arena. At the same time, she removed her hood. The cheering crowd quieted down instantly. They were all taken aback by what they saw. Tang Way walked onto the arena. In the eyes of the crowd, they were expecting some hideous guy from the Holy Ghost sect. However, the person who now stood before them was a stunningly beautiful girl with dark blue eyes and jade-white skin. Compared to a few years ago, Tang Way was much more mature. She had grown taller and become more womanly. She looked like a young adult now. Her beautiful face was ice cold as she walked towards Bei Bei. This video will end here.